morning. Wow, day 2. For some of you, it's day 1. And for some of you, it's so great to see you back here again today. We had really quite an amazing day yesterday. It was fantastic. So we're expecting another super day today. We have incredible panels. We have experiences. We have a keynote speaker who is so inspiring and funny, Ashton Applewhite. We're so lucky to have her come this afternoon. So I want to welcome you, and I think you may know a little bit about Amazing Community, but this is our founder, Stella. I'm sure many of you know Stella. This was Stella's baby and her great idea. I'm the executive director. I'm Leslie Fairstein, and I've talked to, I know, a number of you. So we're excited to start the day. And I'm going to pass this over to Stella, and I'll be talking to you later.
So I want to start with a video before we dive into any content. And it's something that was built back in 2010, but I think it's still relevant today. You might have seen it.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes, and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course, you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes the second follower. Now it's not one nut, it's not 2 nuts, 3 is a crowd, and the crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So, notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So, over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So, first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit. But it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that at TED. Thanks.
Very good.
I'm the lone nut. And you're all the leaders who are going to continue this movement. That's what we're here for. We want to start a movement to change the workplace so it's inclusive and it allows people from all sorts of backgrounds, abilities, capabilities to be part of it and be engaged and have a meaningful work and have a sustainable financial future. The reason we started Amazing Community was crazy statistics that women between 55 to 65 constitute half of the long-term unemployment. Things might have changed, but not as fast. And God will talk a little more about the employment rate and what we're experiencing right now. That segment will continue to grow, will continue to face the same issues if we don't do something about it. And yes, there is a part to help women prepare for the workplace of the future, help them with skills that will be necessary in the modern workplace, but also there is a big part that the organizations have to do. And this is about creating a different process by which we select and retain candidates, and creating a less biased process for that, and some of the speakers will talk about that. It also is about the workplace design, and that includes both physical workplace to ensure it's accessible and those with certain physical limitations are able to come in and participate, as well as digital workplace and how we design it as an organization and put technology in place. It also is about education and upskilling and creating an opportunity for everybody to reach that gap of digital fluency. And then the other part is it's really business opportunities. If you create products that anyone can take advantage of, and it's an inclusive design, you're not only catering to the extremes, you're catering to mainstreams. So again, it takes a movement, and it takes many, many leaders to make a change. And we're here just to start that conversation and hopefully inspire you through all of the speakers that we have today and your own participations. We will design later certain things that you can do practically and take home, as well as we want to use this as an opportunity to get to know each other, and then from this point on be part of the same conversation. So we have a lot of interesting topics and interesting speakers and inspiring stories. So, and I'm sure every single one of you also have a story to share. So please connect, please share it, and please be part of the movement. And with that, I'd like to give the microphone, pass it on to Jennifer Brown, who will facilitate the first panel. And first panel is about the macro trends that we need to think about that inform the labor markets, the employment, and the workplace.
Great. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. And so I am. I've been focused on diversity and inclusion for over a decade. Thank you. And I'm a consultant, change management and organizational change expert, I suppose. And so when we talk about diversity and inclusion, of course, it's all about change. The drivers of change, the barriers to change, the systems questions we should be asking about change, top down, bottom up, and what we call the frozen middle. Anybody else talk about the frozen middle in organization? Those middle managers that have everything to do with retention of talent, but who are, I think, the least equipped and least passionate in some cases about inclusiveness because of the sort of the duties that call, the day-to-day, responsibilities that they have. So my team and I are fanned out on any given day across the Fortune 500. We are literally like a little McKinsey mobilized to help companies build their diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging strategies. So the language is changing as well in my clients, particularly West Coast. Equity and belonging are words that are in vogue and coming, I think, from two places. The social justice movement absolutely is starting to permeate the corporate conversation, and then belonging is very much a younger talent word. Now, do all of us relate to belonging? Heck yeah, right? I think it's what we really wanted. We, and I say we as a Gen Xer, and I know there may be boomers in here and maybe traditionalists as well, but we wanted a workplace where we belong deeply, but we didn't have the generational might that, for example, the millennials have. And I say we as Gen X. Gen X is half the size, of millennials, and also half the size of baby boomers. We are a tiny generation. So in my own reflection on ourselves, we were cynical, we were independent, we were the latchkey kids, we were very sort of disconnected, and I think that we were that first generation where the cracks started to appear in our faith in institutions that a company would take care of us for our lifetimes. hence my becoming an entrepreneur. Because I thought, I can't count on this. I need to have the agency to create my own future. The other reason I fell out, I think, is I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. So I've been out since I was 22. And inclusion really hits hard for us. 50% of us are still closeted in the workplace. We share a lot with the community of disabilities and diverse abilities, as some of my clients call it, because we fear disclosure, self-disclosure. Self-ID is what we call it. So companies are trying desperately to count us. But we don't really trust the institutions to check that box, do we? What are they going to do with that information? Are they really walking the talk? But this community in the LGBTQ side that I know so well is brave and courageous and full of incredible stories. And I think some of the most talented and equipped leaders for the future, because whenever you're on the outside or the margins of the norm, you develop tremendous resourcefulness and resilience, and you have no choice. You've got to kind of go deep inside and figure out what are you about and what is going to be your legacy as a leader. And so I'm deeply proud of having had to come out, but the opportunity to be in this community has just been transformative for me. So what interests me, and I hope this panel will get into some issues, is so who is falling out of that workplace? Is it a generational thing? Is it Gad will talk about white collar, blue collar jobs. Where is the labor shortage, really, when we say that? Can any of us define, where those jobs are? What kinds of jobs are they? How do we think about the longer and longer lives that we're leading, and how vital we still are in those years? I'll disclose I'm not in my 50s yet, getting close. But I really think about this a lot because there's so much knowledge in the post-50 community in the workplace, but companies are entranced with young talent, and that seems to be all we talk about. And we glamorize it. I think we overly kind of study it and rotate to it. I'll tell you, there are generational diversity networks popping up in a lot of the bigger companies I work in. So sometimes they're multi-generational networks. Sometimes they are Gen Y or early in career networks, which, by the way, early in career can actually mean all ages, which I like. I like the inclusiveness of that. It doesn't just assume that because you're young, you're early in career. A lot of us could be going through many, many transitions. I don't see what I'd like to see, which is the mature worker, leader kinds of networks popping up. I would have thought I would, because I think this topic, and this is why I'm here, and I think this is so important. How are we attracting people in transition? There's so much knowledge that's walking out the door at companies, and nobody seems terribly bothered by this. So, I'm disturbed by it, because we all are at our wisest in many ways as we age into these years, as leaders, as change management experts, because we have seen how organizations go through change. We know how to lead it. We know what the stakeholder analysis is all about. We know who holds the power. We understand that. And nothing changes in organizations without getting the powerful on board. Yeah, sadly. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. I'd love to bring our panel up, and I know we have Gads here. We've got Francis. Hi, just came on in. Nice to meet you. So if my panel would come up, and we'll have each of them talk about their work, and then we'll just jump right in. Francis there. Wonderful. So let me describe a little bit about what we're going to be talking about, and you can be thinking about questions that you have for these leaders. What are some alternate sources of talent? I hear all the time, we just can't find fill in the blank, right? It's not in the pipeline. I'm reminded, who said the binder full of women thing? Oh gosh.
It seemed bad.
Yeah. I am so tired of organizations saying they can't source enough diverse talent, that they're competing, with other employers. It's just not there. They're not in the pipeline. Therefore, we can't diversify our leadership ranks. It is such a common resistance statement, and it's really frustrating for a lot of us in this world. And so we'll talk about alternative sources of talent. The war for talent. So at the same time, there's a shortage, but where is the shortage? How do we think about that shortage? And instead of focusing primarily on millennials around this shortage, how can we tap into other generations and segments of our workforce? Great, wonderful. So, let's start with you, since you've got your mic. Tell us about your role at the conference board and give people a little context about what the conference board is, et cetera, and where you fit in.
Sure. Can you hear me now? Or,
No, we need the mic.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for having me today. I work with Stella at the conference board sometimes, so it's a pleasure to be here. I'm the chief economist for North America at the conference board. In a lot of human capital related events, people wonder what is an economist doing here, so I'll explain in a minute. So one of my responsibilities is our labor market work, and in particular, since 2014 or so, we noticed that the unemployment rate is dropping very rapidly, and there is a massive number of baby boomers retiring. So we kind of started worrying at that point, even though the unemployment rate was still high, we started worrying what if this trend continues in the next several years. And I don't know how many of you were not born in December 1969. I think some of you are still not born, definitely you. But at that's how far back you need to go to find unemployment rate that is lower than we have now at 3.7%. So the economy is growing quite rapidly. Companies are hiring rapidly. And at the same time, because of the massive retirement of baby boomers, the working age population is barely growing at all. So we have a lot of demand for workers and relatively low supply of workers. Now, what's interesting is that when we think about, in recent decades, when we think about the types of occupations where there is a kind of a perceived shortage, we mostly think about STEM or white-collar occupations in general. What's interesting, and this is still, I think, a very unreported phenomena yet, is that now the shortages are more visible in blue-collar and low-paid services jobs than they are at white-collar jobs. And part of the reason is that, in some sense, it's a good reason, that in the US, the American dream is having a college degree. And you see the share of young people with a college degree growing very rapidly, especially after the Great Recession. And people with a college degree typically are unwilling to take blue-collar and low-paid services jobs. So on top of that, there has been the disability epidemic. There has been, thank you, a very large increase in the share of people who are not in the labor force due to disability. And it's partly related to the opioid crisis, but maybe other reasons as well. And almost all of them are people without a college degree. So what you have is almost no growth in the working age population, but if you look divided into education groups, you see that actually people with college degree, there is still a solid growth in the working age population, but if you look at people without a college degree, you actually see them shrinking very rapidly. Now, this wouldn't have been a problem if the demand for blue-collar jobs was declining as well, but surprisingly, despite all the automation and AI and technological progress that we're seeing, there's actually strong growth in blue-collar jobs. Production workers, transportation workers, construction, health aides, maintenance and cleaning, those are still jobs that the demand for them is growing. So that's why we are seeing a larger shortage in blue-collar jobs than in white-collar jobs, and that's likely to continue to be the case through 2030, where most of the baby boomers will retire by then. So that's kind of the overall picture. So one thing, it's interesting to when the kind of the role of women in that, and this is also which I just figured it out and saw the data recently. In occupations where there are relatively few women, like transportation and construction, there has been a very large increase in the share of women in recent years. It's now the highest ever. And especially transportation, which I think is the ground zero for the labor shortages right now, because a huge increase in demand for drivers with the online shopping and other trends, and in those occupations, employers are struggling to recruit, so they turn to women. So I know that many of you, or many women, especially older women, are not thinking about being a truck driver, but there has been an increase. And you know, last week I gave a presentation at the Navy to a 3-star admiral and his staff, and I was talking to some people there, and I didn't know that, but apparently there are women even in the Navy SEALs. So there's almost no place in the Navy where they don't recruit women. So if you can be in the Navy SEALs, you can also try a truck. So I think that women, and certainly, I mean, in kind of pure blue-collar jobs, there are fewer women, but in jobs like health support and food services, where we are starting to see shortages as well, there are certainly a lot of women there. So I think raising the labor force participation of women is very crucial at this time and for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Gad. So interesting, isn't it? Unexpected in some ways. And so Gad mentioned disabilities issues are impacting people's ability to remain in the workforce. So Francis is an expert on accessibility and disabilities issues, having been at IBM for years and years, right, Francis? How many years? A lifer. A lifer. So Francis, tell us a little bit about your past work and what you're focusing on now, and your view about accessibility and inclusive technology. So, you know, how is this good business, and, you know, working for a company like IBM, you know, how is that company tackling best practices and developing next practices?
Great. Well, good morning. So like Jennifer said, I was IBM's first Chief Accessibility Officer. It's a very fancy title. How many of you know about accessibility? Oh, okay, pretty good. So the job that I had on IBM was actually a life-changing job. I had, like Jennifer said, I had, when I retired 2 years ago, I had 38 years with IBM. But my first 2/3 of my life was actually in sales and marketing. Very mainframe, large system, and including opening up IBM's China marketing financial services sector. So selling to banks, insurance company, capital markets, and all that. And then I had this opportunity to join IBM Research to head up the IBM Accessibility Group. I actually knew nothing about disability. It was really purely a career move on my side, thinking IBM Research, you know, you couldn't be more prestigious than IBM Research. Then after I joined, and on my team I actually had blind scientists and deaf engineers, and the job started out to be a job, I always say, and then became a career, and then became a calling. Because I think there is something unique about how we look at disability topic, and we have a lot of HR professionals here. Many of you probably can relate that the hiring people with disability, in some cases, I won't say in all cases, driven by legislation like American Disability Act. So I know HR is under tremendous pressure, especially if you're a federal contractor like PwC or IBM, that you have to prove that the X percentage of your population or your employee base has to be people with disability in order to qualify to be a federal contractor. So that has been kind of predominant view of why we should hire people with disability, legislative kind of meeting the mandate, so to speak. But for me, the transformative part about this experience was that my job and my team was in IBM research. How many of you have seen the movie of Hidden Figures? Mm-hmm. Okay, so in that movie, they talked about the IBM mainframe and the women actually making the difference. And that really was has always been the spirit of IBM. That is, they view diversity as a kind of a base for innovation. I'm actually writing a book called Authentic Inclusion, Drives Disruptive Innovation, because I really, through my own, as you can see, I am really not a West. Actually, I have my beautiful sister-in-law, Cece West, the blonde hair beauty there. I'm thankful because it's her brother, a white male, that I married, so I became a West. So you can say that so you can say that I actually experienced inclusion firsthand. And through my own personal experience and also my work at IBM, what I really realized that diversity really is more than just a quota. It's really, if you're truly authentic about inclusion, then that will drive the innovation, will enable your company to create better product, better services, better apps for startups. So since my retirement, I started my own company, Francis West Co., and with the sole mission is to change the perception about inclusion from a mandated legislative perspective to a disruptive innovation perspective. And also in this definition of inclusion, that will be the last point I make, was that, we talked about constituencies. Disability is one constituency none of us can escape. And yet, we a lot of times think about disability as about them, but it's really about all of us. If you're over age 50, and Jennifer, I know you probably cannot relate to that. I always jokingly said when I started the job, I had perfect vision. Now I have vision impairment. I have hearing impairment. My knees are beginning to go. And frankly, cognitively, I can't remember things. So I'm now doing it for myself. So the last piece of work I did at IBM right before I retired to start my own company was that Outthink Aging. Because I feel very strongly that the disability, if you put it in the context of aging, it's about all of us. So my hope is that, through events like this, and some of the collaborators in the room, that we can really begin to drive the change in thinking about this topic from the very top, and frankly from the individual too. A lot of person, either you're dealing with people with disability or people with disability themselves have because the system, so to speak, the legislation environment force a lot of us to think a certain way. I think we need to be, really changing the thinking frame up and down to view this as innovation.
Thank you, Francis. I'm already learning so much. We have Dr. Ruth Finkelstein next, and who focuses on the policy side of this discussion. And I think it's fascinating, Ruth, I hope you'll share a little bit about how folks are going out on their own because they're forced to, so sort of these choices, we call them choices. And I was curious, actually, Gad talked about their retirement of baby boomers, and I thought, is that voluntary? What are the factors in that, right? We can't assume that's by choice. She's executive director of Brookdale Center on Aging, Hunter College, CUNY, and a public policy leader advocating for healthy aging. So Ruth, tell us more about what you do and your point of view.
Thanks. And thank you for including me. in this conference on inclusion.
Yeah.
Use the mic. Oh, I'll get going and you'll hear me, but I will use the mic. So I just had a birthday. I turned 64, and that Ringo Starr song has been kind of playing in my head a little bit. But I tell you this, not so that I'll get birthday greetings from you all, but I will accept them. Yes, there you go. But because it's part of my one-woman campaign, which has gained no traction whatsoever, to have us all come out about our age. And I mean this in a kind of serious way, because one of the ways that we perpetuate the ageism that is rampant in the workplace is by hiding. We buy into their terms. We dye our hair. All of your hair is beautiful. And it's everybody's choice, of course. Don't see quite enough red and blue in here, but you can work on it. This is everybody's choice, but what I don't like is when I see and hear about young women, principally, young to me is 40s, who are feeling like they need to have plastic surgery and feeling like they need to do stuff to their hair that's a little above and beyond pleasure, to hide their age. And that is our internalized ageism, right? This is us buying the fact that we're less than if we're older, when in fact, this is an area that I research pretty carefully. And what's true is we change as we age. Just as the previous speaker said, none of us who are over 50, or few of us who are over 50, should challenge our children to foot races. We are almost always going to lose. There are a few of you that I know are exceptions to that. Similarly, we shouldn't take our glasses off and offer to read, the little, probably the exit sign, but the little things down there. We're not going to do that. But really, is that required in most positions? It's not required in most positions. In fact, most positions can be adapted or are already perfect for the skills that we have in greater degree frequently than our younger counterparts have frequently. These are all generalizations, and of course there are exceptions. Some of us have no skills at all. Some of them have no skills at all, but I'm talking about sort of as a group. And it's actually true that one kind of intelligence that we gather over our lifetime is more accessible to us and is functioning faster than it did when we were younger, while another kind of our intelligence, yes, it takes longer, and that stuff with names is true. It happens. But again, you can arrange your life to compensate for that. And that word compensate is an adaptive mechanism. It is one of the definitions of a successful person, is that circumstances change, and you adapt. You've done it your whole life. If you're using the same strategies that got you through toddlerhood, you're in big trouble inside the workplace or outside the workplace. A successful individual is an adaptive and resilient individual. And as people who've been doing that for longer, we know more about doing that because we've done it to, for, with, about more circumstances, right? But employers do not have access to that data when we are hiding in plain sight. Taking those dates off of our resumes, pretending to be an age other than what we are, we're not representing, right? We're not representing. And we're also not coming together to demand, sorry HR professionals, but to demand the flexibility in so many dimensions in job arrangements that make work for us at this time in at this time in my life. You don't have to agree to be this age. Me, at this time in my life, but also that make work for students, that make work for parents, that make work for caregivers, right? It's not, you're not using that flexibility for the same purposes at different life stages, though life stages too are completely disrupted, and high time they were, so that we can be newlyweds at 60, and we can be, by virtue of that, new parents at 60. My friend Mark Friedman, who's the guy who talked about Encore, didn't talk about it. Well, he does talk about it, but he also kind of invented it. Talks all the time about how he gets the AARP discount in hotels and needs a crib. So that just is what it is. I do not believe the crib is for him. That's my very strong belief that he has a young child. And the fact of the matter is all that life stage stuff is all gobbledygooked up anyway, but even without it being all scrambled, the fact of the matter is that the flexibility that we need in order to bring our whole selves in to the workplace is the same flexibility many other people need. And quiet as it's kept, if men thought they needed it, they would at least have a fighting chance of participating on the home front as if they were equal partners in that endeavor instead of sort of the subjects of that endeavor. So this isn't even a women-specific thing. It's kind of more like a human-specific thing. Thanks.
Oh my goodness. So much to say. When I do keynote, I do polling in my keynotes. So just yesterday I had 1,300 people in the audience, and I asked, what are you not bringing to work when we talk about bringing your full self to work? And age was the biggest on the bar graph. It literally popped up, 1,300 people. And race and ethnicity are lower, and of course I was reflecting on that. That's because there are fewer people of color in that room. I was in Iowa. So, that makes sense proportionally. But gender, more than half the room was women, but gender was lower than age. So I asked people to choose the number one thing. And I can back up what everything Ruth is saying. I hear covering stories around for older folks, and I also for younger folks, interestingly. Millennials, as they get positions of influence and more senior positions, they are not wanting their birthday parties celebrated in the office. because they don't want to be associated with millennials because it's stigmatized. So it's very interesting how everyone's kind of doing this dance of authenticity around age. I also have women stand up and talk about hair is like the topic, right? It's, do I stop coloring my hair? For women of color, it's, do I straighten my hair? Do I feel I can wear it natural in this company when there's nobody that looks like me and I'm trying to fit in? So hair is such a political move, isn't it? Oh, alrighty, so our last, this is amazing. We're drinking from a fire hose here. This is incredible. Nicola Marini is the leader of the Center for AI and Aging with IBM Research. So another IBM.
Jennifer, no.
Where's, oh, she's not here.
Couldn't make it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh gosh. And we didn't get a chance to meet. Hi. So sorry. And I don't have any info on you on my notes, so you can let us know.
Hi there. So I'll start with the important facts. I'm 46. I don't dye my hair. I'm naturally
There you go.
blonde, and my parents are still not gray, and they're a lot older than I am. I've been legally blind since birth, meaning I'm not correctable to 2020. So I've had that problem for a long time. Those are the important topics that I should cover before saying who I am. So my background, my name is Frida Polli. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Panelists. And I'm here to represent technology as a friend in our quest to be more inclusive and friendly for any type of inclusion activities that we may think about. So I think a lot of times, so very quickly, my background is I was a cognitive neuroscientist. I spent 10 years at Harvard and MIT. Using cognitive neuroscience to do research, we then now use cognitive neuroscience to basically help companies identify talent in different ways. So instead of focusing on the resume, which I would argue is hugely sexist, racist, ageist, and probably disability unfriendly too, although I'm less familiar with those items, we basically have our platform look at people in a much more holistic way by looking at their cognitive and emotional traits. And again, this isn't about right or wrong. There's no trait that we measure that's considered a true strength or weakness. It's all relative. It's like a sorting hat. It's trying to help you understand where you fit in the world of work. And so we use these traits to help employers basically think about talent in a very, very different way. The reason I think that I'm often asked to speak on topics of inclusion, accessibility, and others is for a variety of reasons. So first, we use our technology to help companies increase their diversity of people of all kinds. And one of the main ways that we ensure that we can do that is that we actually proactively audit all of the algorithms that we build for companies using these new talent signals for gender and ethnic bias, and we also don't find age bias, at least with the over 40 cutoff. And the reason we think this is hugely important to do this type of work is because algorithms are really only what you design them to be. So I'm sure you've all read about Amazon's sexist algorithms. We had Microsoft that created the bot that spewed profanity. I mean, basically, like, I gave this quote the other day, an algorithm is a little like a toddler. You need to know where it is in your technology. You need to know what it's doing. You can't just assume that, hey, I created this lovely toddler and now I'm going to let it loose on society. The answer is no. That you wouldn't do that with your child, I hope. And so you shouldn't do that with your AI. And so really, at the end of the day, if you create AI to be inclusive, it can be inclusive, and essentially any company that we have worked with has shown improvements in gender, ethnic, and socioeconomic diversity wherever they've used Pemetrics. And another thing that I would like to say about technology that we create is we can also make it as accessibility friendly as we choose. So we actually are one of the few companies that track match rates for people that choose disability accommodations versus not, and we're very proud to report that those match rates are the same. This is not common in any type of sort of current use of any kind of tech-enabled talent assessment. People often don't look at accessibility match rates because, quite frankly, they know they're going to be lower. So I think that, again, I'm here to speak to you guys as an audience in general, not about Pametrics per se, but about technology. And to say that I think if we don't use technology to help with issues of inclusion and accessibility, we are 100% missing out on a huge, huge area of opportunity. And I think unfortunately what's happened historically is that technologists haven't cared about this issue. They haven't designed their technology to be diversity friendly, to be accessibility friendly. Therefore, we have the case studies like Amazon, and therefore technology continues to get a bad name in terms of what AI and algorithms and all this other stuff do. But the fact of the matter is, just like toddlers, if you don't teach them not to hit their friends and all the rest of it, then you're going to have a pretty not very well behaved toddler. And that's the same with AI, right? If you don't actually train the algorithm in the way that you'd like to see it perform, it's going to act that way. So I'd like to just encourage everyone to think of technology as neutral, and that really it will behave in the way it was created by the people who designed it, and that you can 100% design technology to help with issues of accessibility, diversity, and other things, and that we should not automatically put it in the bucket of things that are going to continue to make the world a less fair, less equal, less inclusive place, because again, everywhere that we've looked where the Pametrics technology has been introduced, the opposite results are found. So I think that's really the main message I wanted to share with everyone.
So fascinating. The bookend of that is, I actually think humans are somewhat hopeless around hacking our own unconscious bias. Like I'm continually frustrated. Yep. I do the training classes, right? And I increase awareness, and then no behavior change happens, right? Because it's hard to spot yourself in the act. And there's a million moments every day where we are, and so technology is actually, I think, in the positive, to continue what she was saying, it's going to help us, train us to spot it when it's happening, to build new muscle, to build new habits. Because unfortunately, we are that sort of hopeless human creature.
And Jennifer, if I can add to that. So first of all, anyone that's studied diversity training unfortunately has shown that it's ineffective. Unfortunately, and again, it's because at 46, I have a lifetime of experience, and unfortunately, that half an hour, day-long training is just not going to eradicate like that. Secondly, you can actually test an algorithm for bias in a very stringent way. And algorithms are held to higher standards than humans. So if you're biased as a human, you kind of get a pass. So it's like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. An algorithm shows that, it's front page news, right? So I think we actually have a better shot at trying to fix this solution. And then in the day, if you can actually train technology to work like blind auditions did for orchestras, that was really the reason participation changed from 5% to 35%. And that wouldn't have happened if we just continued, having people see who the person was. So I really think that technology can help us move towards that. So thanks for raising that.
Yeah, sure. And I want to add, there's one other technology that a lot of folks talk about, text.io. Does anyone know about that company? Yeah. Text.io. So they, it literally looks for gendered language in job descriptions and, performance reviews. Literally, and you mouse over and it suggests alternate words that aren't as biased. So talk about flawed humans, right? We perpetuate these stereotypes in every single thing we touch in the business world, and we repel diverse talent from the job description to the interview to the performance review. We sort of encourage these stereotypes, and it's a very harmful loop. So we've got to break that, and I'm not sure we have the capability. Bless you.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah. Can I just? I also want to add to the point that because we have a lot of HR people in the audience, and just follow on this technology point. It was very interesting. Like I mentioned earlier, when we look at accessibility, obviously IBM is a technology company, so it was really from a technology standpoint. And so, but when I came out from IBM, and I did a search of inclusion in CIO, because CIO, as Chief Information Officer, their job is to worry about technology both for their internal workplace and also position, whether it's IoT, AI, VR, AR, whatever. There was very few hits. So to me, that is a problem that if we really recognize, like, it was beautifully explained that we are in the technology world, and that technology is going to underpin everything we do, from living, learning, working, playing, and everything. Then it's what I call T plus T. You have a talent strategy, you must have a technology strategy. So I think it's really upon our current HR and personally in my company now, that's what I try to move the CIO, the CTO to understand the inclusion topic. But it'd be very helpful if the HR really actually begin to make a very strong, both stand and frankly demand of a, kind of a collaboration with the CIO and CTOs, because that's how you begin to address the issues. Because right now, organizationally, is in two separate silos.
Anything to add, Gad, Ruth? I want to leave some time for questions. I have a million, but what would you all love to ask these incredible experts on these topics? Anything? Yes, Simone.
Yes, I've got a question. It's a little bit to everybody. With the market booming, there's a lot more people coming into the labor force, perhaps non-traditionally. Do you see companies working to keep them there? Sort of, I think of Rosie the Riveter, right? A lot of women went into the workforce during the wars and then were pushed out again as soon as the war was over, the men came back. Or if there's an economic downturn, are those people who are diverse and non-traditional, are they going to be the first ones pushed out? And what are companies doing to sort of integrate them quickly so they're not the first on the list?
So I don't have any data, but what I would like to suggest is that if we do what some of the panelists have suggested, which is use objective ways that can be underpinned by technology to actually hire, measure performance and all the rest of it, that's going to be far less likely to happen than if we rely on purely human abilities to do that. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think it does go back to this idea that Francis said, which is that we need to work with technology and talent to make sure that doesn't happen.
We'll just probably pass it down. I bet everybody will have things to say. So there are strategies to recruit diverse and inclusive workforces, and there are some overlapping but different strategies to retain them. And part of what we encourage to be sort of an H-smart workplace, which isn't saying a workplace for old people, it's saying a workplace that's smart about age, is retention strategies as well as recruitment strategies. And retention strategies have to do with training, have to do with promotion from within, have to do with sort of career arc planning, regardless of your age, have to do with recognition that employees are actually more likely to want to hang around with your company if they're older than if they're younger, and to therefore to invest appropriately, and also have to do with next step planning. So, we now live into our 80s. That means there's a lot of us that are going to work for 50 years. The odds are we're not going to want to do the same thing 50 years later that we went into the workforce interested in. And so part of a great retention strategy is to help people think about what's next and even to support them training for it.
Yeah, I think the best kind of a remedy against that kind of up and down is really focusing on skills, right? I know in the people with disability world, I think that there are Department of Labor statistics that they do get hired in when the economy is hot, and then they are usually the first one to let it go. So one of the things that I've been focusing on a lot, because like I said, my experience in working people with disability as innovators And if you are in IBM research, chances are the probability of you getting laid off is a lot less than, say, if you're just kind of a kind of a frontline jobs. So as part of the future work kind of studies, I think it's each person, especially people who are not quote unquote mainstream, like myself. I'm looking back, I was very conscious to always think ahead of what the job will become, and then position myself. And in some cases, it's just like the video, I'm the loner out there. Like when I took the accessibility job, I remember one of my mentors came to me and said, "What are you doing, Francis? You're going to the weeds." It's like, this is not mainstream, right? Remember, I was selling mainframe large system to financial service sectors, right? The State Street Bank, Bank of America, this and that, and now here I am doing this. But somehow at the gut level, I felt like this is something to come, right? Of course, it's taking a long time. I'm still at it. But the net is, I think the skill is going to be the key. As part of the future work, I really promote people with different abilities. It could even be first generation, immigrant like myself. Is that one of the hot things right now is because frankly technology becoming human centric, right? We have gone from a large system for processing efficiency to human experience. So if you care about human experience, you better design for human experience. So I always advise my people with disabilities, especially the young generation, men and women, think about potentially becoming a design expert, right? This design thinking, like we talked about, inclusion by design, is so hot. So I think if we can help, especially as HR or as mentors, to help people think about the job to come, then I think we're doing a job where we're helping them to retain it. One last thing, the first keynote I ever done when I graduated from IBM, I almost retired from IBM, was at Daimler Truck division in Portland. And so I did some study. I don't know whether there's a huge shortage of truck drivers. And one of the problems is the truck driver, they're aging and their belly is getting bigger. So they have to redesign the cab so there's more distance for the belly to sit. And more truck drivers bringing their wives, and they're actually eating healthier. They don't want to go to the truck stop. So now the cab has to have mirror for women to make herself pretty, or maybe do her hair, but then also cooking. So talk about design for the future, right? And that's a kind of an innovation potentially can tie to a company who's very mindful of the changing diversity or dynamics.
Fascinating. All right, we're almost out of time, but Gab, yes, last word.
First of all, my belly also got it makes me like a great candidate. But in response to your question, I have bad news and good news. I think the bad news is that layoffs 20, 30 years ago, layoffs were only occurring in periods of big crisis, and now they are kind of a regular part of the toolbox of many companies. So there will be slowdowns and downturns in the economy, and there will be layoffs, and indeed the people who get are more likely to be laid off are on the periphery of the labor market. So the people who work for temp help agencies, minorities, for example, tend to are much more likely to be laid off during a downturn. So it will happen, and I think it's hard to fight against it. But the good news is that we are in a period that there will be a downturn, but for the next 10, 15 years, I think the natural state of the labor market is one of a significant tightness, because as I mentioned before, the retirement of the baby boomers is going to continue at least through 2030. So I think, and tight labor markets are especially helpful for people who are less attached to the labor market. So I think that overall, if you kind of willing to accept that there will be some struggles along the way. I think the next 12, 15 years are going to be very good periods for populations that had harder time attaching to the labor market. For example, the unemployment rate of blacks and Hispanics now is the lowest ever.
Thank you for ending us on a high note. Let's give them a round of applause.